In June of 1816, outside what is now Winnipeg, 21 men were killed in a fight that started over food. The fight was not over gold, and it was not over furs. It was over pounded dried meat, mixed with melted fat and sewn into a buffalo hide. Two fur companies had spent 2 years threatening each other over who could carry it out of the country, because without it, nobody moved. So how did a food worth killing over vanish off every shelf when you can make a batch of it in 2 minutes? This story does not start with the killing. It starts with water. Every piece of fresh meat you have ever picked up is mostly water. That water is what makes it heavy to carry, and that water is what lets it rot. Take a strip of lean meat, dry it slow until it snaps instead of bending, pound it down to a coarse powder, and pour warm rendered fat over it until the fat soaks through and seals every particle away from the air. Let it cool hard. What you're holding now is called pemmican. The name comes from pimmican, a Cree word built on pimi, which means fat or grease. The Lakota call it wasna. The old accounts describe it keeping through whole winters with no ice, no brine, and no cellar, and being eaten straight out of the bag cold, with no fire and no pot, and no preparation of any kind. I'm Wes Kingfisher. What I bring you comes from the old accounts, the skills native peoples used on this land for thousands of years, gathered from historical records and traditional knowledge and told the way an elder would tell it, plain, slow, and in the right order. The old ones knew things we've nearly forgotten. So, listen close. Now about that protein claim, because it is the part people get wrong in both directions. Ounce for ounce, dried meat carries more protein than the fresh beef it came from. The USDA's own numbers put an ounce of fresh 85% lean beef at around 7 grams of protein. An ounce of that same beef dried runs about 9 or 10. Same animal, same ounce. All you did was pour off the water. Nothing was added, nothing was fortified, nothing came out of a laboratory. The protein was always in there. It was just carrying freight it did not need. Put it in your hands and it gets plainer still. 3 to 4 pounds of fresh lean meat, dried the whole way down, comes out at roughly 1 pound of finished dry meat. You did not lose any food in that. You lost the water it was floating in. Everything that was spread thin through 4 pounds is now sitting in 1, and that is the whole trick underneath every dried meat on earth. The old ones were running it on this ground long before there was a word for it in English. Now, the drying I just walked you through is one piece of Wes's wild game method, where the whole system is written down in order, from the field to the plate, snout to tail. 10 chapters in 4 parts. It runs the sequence the way it actually happens after the shot, which cut belongs to which of the 4 heat methods the old ones used: dry heat, moist heat, smoke, and salt. How to render fat clean so it keeps. The drying, the smoking, the pemmican itself. The heart and the liver and the bones the butcher counter never sells you. And how to handle wild meat safely while you do it. One book against a deep freeze full of ground venison nobody knew what else to do with. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up. Give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you are watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time. There is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. So the protein concentrates, that is the easy half of this, and it is the half the internet has already told you about. Now, the part almost nobody explains. Pemmican is not dried meat by itself. Dried meat is one of two ingredients, and the second one is fat, in roughly equal weight. Britannica's entry on pemmican puts it plain. The pounded meat mixed with an equal amount of melted fat, half of it. Not a spoonful for flavor, not a binder to hold the brick together. Half the finished food, by weight, is rendered animal fat, which means a pound of pemmican is not a pound of pure protein, and anybody selling it to you that way is selling you arithmetic that does not work. So why would people who understood this food better than anyone alive today hand back half their protein on purpose? Two reasons, and both of them are engineering. The first one is the seal. Warm fat poured over powdered dry meat does not sit on top of it. It runs into every gap and hardens around every particle, and air cannot reach what it cannot touch. That is the entire preservation system. No salt barrel, no smokehouse standing over it, no crock, no lid. The fat is the lid. Native peoples across this land worked that out and used the same principle on the plains and up in the North Country long before anybody wrote a word of it down. The second reason is energy. Fat carries more of it, pound for pound, than anything else on the animal. And a voyageur paddling 14 hours or a camp moving through February snow needs energy more than it needs anything. Lean dried meat on its own is a light load that runs out on you. So the old ones built the fat into the food instead of hoping to run across some later. That is not a compromise in the recipe. That is the recipe. The exact ratio moves around in the record. Some accounts run it even, pound for pound. Others come in heavier on the meat or heavier on the fat, depending on the animal, the season, and how hard the country ahead was going to be. But every version of it treats fat as a main ingredient, and that alone puts it against almost everything in the camping aisle today, which is built the other way around, protein forward and the fat taken back out. 10,000 years of testing. That's the guarantee on this one. Now, how it was actually made in the order the accounts give it. It starts with the leanest meat on the animal, and it starts with trimming. Every scrap of fat that stays attached to the muscle is fat that will eventually turn, because fat left inside the meat does not dry. It just waits. So the meat gets cut away clean, and the fat gets set aside for its own job later. That trimming at the front end decides how long the whole batch lasts. Then that lean meat gets sliced thin, thinner than you would guess, and dried. The old accounts describe it going up on racks in sun and wind, or hanging over a slow, smoky fire, and leathery is not far enough. What you want is brittle, so a piece of it snaps in half when you bend it. If it folds, there is still water in it, and water is the one thing you came to remove. Now, if you're going to dry meat at home, follow current tested guidelines for time and temperature from your extension service. The old ones had sun, wind, and smoke that never stopped moving. Your kitchen does not, and we know more about what makes dried meat safe now than the accounts could tell us. That is no knock on the old way. It worked. We simply have better instruments than they had. Once it snaps, it gets pounded, not chopped, pounded between stones in the old accounts until it comes apart into something closer to coarse sawdust than to jerky. That step is not about texture. Powder gives the fat somewhere to go. A whole strip of dried meat has an inside the fat never reaches, and the inside is where it will spoil from. Then the fat. Sweet. The hard fat off the kidneys and around the loins, chopped small and melted down slow and low until it runs clear and the cracklings drop to the bottom. That is rendering, and going slow is the whole trick of it. Rushing the heat scorches it, and scorched fat goes off early. Now the two things meet, and this right here is the 2 minutes. Pour the warm fat over the powdered meat and work it together until every bit of it is coated and it holds a shape when you squeeze it in your fist. Press it into a container or, in the old way, straight into a rawhide bag while it is still warm. Let it set hard. That is the whole assembly. The drying takes a day or two, and the rendering takes an hour, but the making of pemmican itself is about as long as it takes to mix a bowl of anything. Some accounts add dried berries at that stage. Saskatoon berries, Misasquatamina in Cree, along with cranberries and choke cherries, and for special occasions the record mentions cherries and currants. Dried hard first, always, because a berry with any moisture left in it is a wet spot in a dry food, and a wet spot is where the trouble starts. And that is where the regional part comes in, because this was never one recipe. It was a method, and every people who used it fit it to what their country gave them. Bison out on the plains, moose and caribou in the north, elk, deer, and in some places fish. The animal changed. The logic underneath it never did. Now, this food has a reputation for lasting forever, and the accounts do describe it keeping through winters and crossing oceans. But it does not last by magic, and there are 4 ways people ruin it. The first is meat that was not dry enough. If it bends instead of snapping, there is water still in it, and now that water is sealed under fat with nowhere to go. You have not preserved anything. You have shut the problem in where you cannot get at it. The second is fat left on the meat. Marbling and muscle fat do not render and do not dry, and they turn long before the rest of the batch does. The third is fat that got rendered too hot or never strained clean. Bits of tissue left floating in the fat are bits of food left inside the seal, and they go off in there where nobody can see them. And the fourth is air. A cake left loose in a bag with room around it is being worked on from every side. The old ones pressed it tight into the hide while the fat was still warm, so it set as one solid mass with nothing in it but itself. Get those 4 right, and the accounts say it will sit for a very long time. Get one of them wrong, and it fails quietly, which is worse than failing loud. Follow current tested guidelines for storing anything you dry at home, and on any batch you're unsure of, do not gamble. And it was eaten 2 ways. The first way is the one that made it famous. Cold, out of the hand, broken off in a lump, no fire and no dish. That is how a man ate on the move, and it is the reason nobody had to stop. The second way is the one people forget. Broken up and dropped into hot water, it comes apart into a thick stew, and whatever else the country gave you that day went into the pot with it. Wild onion, a handful of dried corn, roots. So it was a ration and a base at the same time. One food that fed a man standing up in the cold and fed a whole camp at night out of a single pot. There is not much on any grocery shelf today that does both jobs. Now, that fight I opened with. By the early 1800s, pemmican had stopped being only a family food and become the fuel of an entire economy. The fur trade ran on canoes, and canoes ran on men, and those men had to eat something that needed no cooking, took up no cargo space, and did not spoil in an open boat. Britannica describes it cooled and sewn into bison hide bags in lots of about 90 pounds, shipped out across the prairie to provision the brigades. The Medes on the Red River were the ones producing it and moving it, and the Northwest Company depended on them for it entirely. Then, on the 8th of January, 1814, Miles McDonald, the governor of the Red River Colony, issued a proclamation forbidding the export of pemmican out of the colony for 1 year. On paper, it was about keeping his own settlers fed. To the Métis and to the Northwest Company, it read as one company trying to starve out another by cutting the food line, and they said so out loud. That decision looked small on the page. It was not. What followed got the name the Pemmican Wars, and it ran 2 years. Seizures, raids, forts taken and burned. Then on the 19th of June, 1816, a party of about 60 Métis and First Nations men under Cuthbert Grant, moving pemmican west to supply the canoe brigades on Lake Winnipeg, was stopped at a place called Seven Oaks by Governor Robert Semple and 28 of his men. When it was finished, Semple and 20 of his party were dead, and on the Métis side, a 16-year-old named Joseph Latendre had been killed. The Canadian Encyclopedia carries the account. I mean, think about that for a second. 2 of the largest trading companies on the continent, and the thing they finally came to blows over was who got to carry the dried meat. That tells you what it was worth. And here's the part that usually gets left out. When Europeans went looking for the ends of the earth, they did not invent a ration to take with them. They took this one. Pemmican went into the Arctic with the search parties hunting Franklin. It went to Antarctica. The Amundsen Museum's own account of his polar sledging records a ration of about 350 grams of pemmican per man per day, later raised to 450, eaten as a hot stew mixed with water, running somewhere around 5,000 calories. Photographs of Scott's sledging rations from 1912 show a tin of it sitting in the day's issue, alongside the biscuits and the sugar. The best equipped men of the industrial age, walking into the coldest country on the planet, with the money and the science of empire behind them, carrying a Cree recipe. So if it was that good, what happened to it? 2 things happened, and neither one of them is that somebody built something better. The first is that the animal it was built on was very nearly wiped off the continent. The Smithsonian puts Plains bison at somewhere between 30 and 60 million across North America before the 1800s. By 1900, fewer than 1,000 were left. Call that a food going out of fashion if you want. Inside a single lifetime, a whole way of eating lost the animal it was built on, and the people who carried the knowledge lost the thing the knowledge was about. The second reason is quieter, and it is the one that keeps a thing buried once it is down. There is no money in pemmican. It is 2 ingredients. Nobody can patent dried meat. Nobody can trademark rendered fat. And there is no version of it in a box with a label on the front that is meaningfully better than what a person can make in their own house for the price of the animal. A food that costs nothing to know is a food nobody advertises. And knowledge nobody advertises in a country that learns almost everything from advertising goes quiet inside about 2 generations. And there is a third thing sitting under both of those. None of this was ever written down by the people who knew it. It was taught by voice, hand to hand, 1 generation standing at the drying rack beside the next one. When the children were sent away to boarding schools and the old languages thinned out, the chain that carried it did not snap loudly. It just stopped having anybody on the far end of it. Nobody had to ban a thing like this. All it took was one generation where there was nobody standing at that rack to be shown. Then the freezer arrived, and the freezer answered the same question Pemmican had been answering since long before anybody wrote it down. Keep the meat cold, and it keeps. Simple, immediate, and it works right up until the power line comes down in an ice storm, and the whole chest turns into an expensive box of spoiling food while you stand there watching it. The old ones never wrote this down, so listen close, because this next part is the one that matters. Pemmican gets filed as survival food, and I would rather you did not file it that way, because that is exactly how it ends up on a shelf in a garage until somebody throws it out. It was a working food, made by people who worked outdoors all day and needed to eat without stopping, and it is still the plainest answer anybody has come up with to that problem. Which brings me back around to those 2 minutes. A batch takes 2 minutes to mix, and that is true. But I want you to hear the honest version of it, because the part that actually matters is the other end. Once it is made, it takes no minutes at all. No cooler, no fire, no pan, no water, nothing to wash afterward, and nothing to pack back out. You reach into a coat pocket at 11 in the morning, 8 miles from the truck, and you eat. And notice what is not in that sentence. No refrigeration, no electricity, no plant, no supply chain, no date printed on the side by somebody you will never meet. The whole of it is an animal, a fire, and a person who knows what to do next. That is the thing the modern camp aisle has never once matched. And it is why every store-bought answer to it is heavier, costs more, and wants something from you before it will feed you. A stove, a pouch of boiling water, a wrapper to carry back out. That is what the Native American way actually means on a thing like this. Use what the land gave you, waste none of it, understand exactly why every step is there, and build the answer so completely that the best funded expeditions on Earth still could not improve on it 100 years later. Go back to those 21 men on the plain outside Winnipeg. From here, it looks like they died over a bag of dried meat, and that is not wrong, but it is not the whole of it either. What was in that bag was the ability to move, to cross country, to work a season, to feed a camp through a winter without asking permission of anybody or anything. The companies understood exactly what they were fighting over. We are the ones who forgot. And that is one page out of Wes's Wild Game Method, where the whole of it is set down in order, from the field to the plate, so not a pound of what the woods give ever goes to waste. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera and point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up, give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you are watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Now, if you enjoyed this video, you will enjoy the video right now on screen even more. I can assure you on that. Click it right now, my friend.